And we are live. We're back with Claudine Hemingway to talk about the lost generation in Paris today.
Bonjour, bonjour.
It's so good to be back. I've been really enjoying doing these live broadcasts. It's so fun to talk to everyone watching. It's a lot different than just recording our video alone and talking to ourselves. The interaction, especially with the social distancing right now.
Yeah, just staring at a computer, talking to each other.
Yeah, it gets old really fast. Hi, Phyllis.
Yeah. Hi, Phyllis. Hi, Kathy.
Kathy's here. Oh, I love that we all have our little cutie husbands and boyfriends in the photos. I can see them in very small. Cheryl's here. Bonjour, Cheryl.
Bonjour.
Yeah, this is so much better because the podcast, I like recording the podcast, but once again, we don't get to see each other. We're just, we're staring at our screens. I miss
We are.
It's much more fun to chat with people. And today is especially special because we are asking trivia questions and you guys get to interact with us. We want you to respond, give your best guess, just kind of think about who you think would have done that. Because we're going to be talking about the lost generation and the women of the lost generation. So there's going to be a couple women you can pick from and you tell us who you think did that. Because there's some really interesting facts about these women.
It's a test.
It's a test. You will not be graded, but it is a test.
You would get a gold star.
Nice to see you, Gwen.
Hi, Gwen.
Namira in Pennsylvania. Hi from Pennsylvania. Where in Pennsylvania are you, Namira? I'm from Maryland originally. I'm familiar with Pennsylvania. You guys are our neighbors.
We're much more spread out on the West Coast.
Yeah. I still need to visit Portland one day.
It's lovely today. It's gray and it's vampire weather, as you like to talk about vampire all the time.
Cheryl's from Ohio. I don't know that. Lettuce. That's an interesting one. Never heard of that. Let me see here. There's someone interesting in the studio. Anyway, so let's get started, guys. We're going to talk about the lost generation in Paris today, and we're going to ask you some questions afterwards, but I just want to start with Claudine giving you guys a little bit of information because Claudine Hemingway is our resident history genius. If you don't know about her already, she knows everything about French history, and she makes it actually fun and not boring, like my 5th grade class where I fell asleep during history class. Stay awake for it. Oh, Lancaster. I know Lancaster. Sorry, Namira. I got sidetracked. Anyway, lost generation. Let's start with Claudine chatting about what that even means if you're not familiar with what the lost generation is.
So the term the lost generation is widely contributed to Gertrude Stein, but it was actually not Gertrude who originally said it. She took her Model T was having problems with the ignition, and she took it to a garage in Paris. And the young guy that was working on it was taking too long, and the garage owner got upset. And he said, "Oh, you guys are all the lost generation." So that's where she actually heard it. Then in Movable Feast, Hemingway writes a lot about it. And has a whole chapter about it and says that he gets in kind of an argument with her. And she says, you guys are all the lost generation. You just come over here and you're just getting drunk and doing nothing with your life. And at that time, he actually wasn't a big drinker. I mean, everybody always thinks of Hemingway as this big drunk, but he actually wasn't a big drinker at that time. So that wasn't exactly true. But he wrote a Movable Feast about it, but then he also used the term "In the Sun Also Rises." So if anything, Wiley always said that she said that, but it was kind of Hemingway that kind of made the term kind of more known.
Yeah.
It was the time that they say that the generation that grew up, but they were born between 1883 and 1900, and they came of age during World War I. That is what is kind of the lost generation. Now we have the Gen Z and the Gen this and Gen that. But I think that, that's 100 years ago now, pretty much exactly, the 20s in Paris. I think it's kind of interesting to see if we won't have again, a quote unquote lost generation through all of this that we're going through right now.
Yeah, I think we're all going to be a little traumatized after the pandemic.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of people are reevaluating what's important and what they want to do with their life and stuff. So I think it might be kind of interesting to see what's going to happen there.
Yeah, if there's any silver lining in a pandemic, it's given us all a lot of time to think about what we enjoy and like what we want to do with our free time because we have a lot of it right now.
Yes,
So
for sure.
We can have a Lost Generation take 2.
A Lost Generation, yeah, part 2.
Paris made it more interesting, I feel like.
Very. Oh, yeah. Well, it was, I mean, they could live on $1,000 a year in Paris.
I wish I could live on $1,000 a year now in Paris.
You can't live on $1,000 a week in Paris now. But for a year, I mean, that's insane. Take me back to that time. Maybe not the Turkish toilets, you know, the holes in the floor. But
we could skip the whole Turkish toilet thing.
Yeah, but $1,000 a year would be pretty great.
Mm-hmm. And then you talk a little bit about, so for our trivia questions, we have a group of 5 ladies that you're going to have to respond. Oh, we have Tina and Nicole here too as well. Thank you for
Tina. Hi, Nicole.
Welcome to our live stream. So talk a little bit about the ladies we're going to be talking about, because we're going to ask you guys some questions and then you have to guess who you think we're talking about.
So there's, of course, Gertrude Stein. You know, these are all, we picked 4. I think it is 4. There's Gertrude Stein, Sylvia Beach, who was the one that opened Shakespeare and Company, and Zelda Fitzgerald. Oh, there's 5. Hadley, and then maybe a little Pauline.
We'll throw a little Pauline in. If you don't know who Pauline is, she's the one who stole Ernest Hemingway from Hadley.
Yes. That's why I always am like, Pauline.
We don't want to give Pauline too much attention. We're still mad at her.
Yeah, we're still mad at her.
Yeah, we're not okay with Pauline. So we're going to ask you questions, and then just feel free to drop a comment in and give your guess out of those 5 ladies. I think I'll just copy and paste those ladies here. And does everyone know who Gertrude is? Some people might not know who Gertrude is. I mean, we kind of just explained that in Lost Generation, but Sylvia started. Well, that's one of the questions, so we won't do that. Anyway, we're guessing. I'm not giving it away. Put your thinking caps on, the name you like the most. So let's start off with our first question. Who do you think served with the American Red Cross in Serbia? You think any of these? I mean, that's pretty wild. Serbia, American Red Cross, I think 1920s, early 1900s. Any idea?
That's a hard. We started with a hard one.
Yeah, we started with an interesting one. I don't think that I would be a woman jumping at the chance to go to Serbia during the war.
No, especially during the war one.
We might have needed to start with a little easier one.
Yes.
Let's see. Do we have any guesses? Pauline, Hadley. I think those are some good guesses. I mean, these were all pretty brave women who were changing the world at the time. Sylvia, good guess. Catherine. Anybody else got some guesses? Pauline was the wife stealer. Hadley was Ernest Hemingway's first wife. Sylvia started something very special in Paris. Gertrude. Okay. I mean, any one of these women could have done that. They were all very brave and doing crazy things for that time period, as women especially. All right. Whoever he met during the war. Well, who was it, Claudine?
Sylvia.
Sylvia went with the American Red Cross in Serbia.
Yeah, she came back to Paris.
Which is actually very surprising, because I would be terrified to do that. Let's move on to the next one that is a little easier. Mm-hmm. Claudine, read.
Who was quoted as saying she refused to be bored chiefly because she wasn't boring?
Who do you think would say something like that? She would refuse to be boring because she wasn't boring. I love this quote. This is one of my favorite quotes. I'm obsessed with this person. For her too. Yeah, she's one of my favorite women ever, really. I mean, I've read a lot of history about her. We actually just recorded a podcast about her, which will be coming out later. She was a fascinating woman. Oh, all right. We got a lot of Zelda. We got some good guessers here. She refused to be bored, chiefly because she wasn't boring. Yep, don't forget Zelda. I think that these are our lists again. I'll send you guys the list of who you can guess. We got Gertrude, Sylvia, Hadley, Zelda, or Pauline. And I think that people have a pretty good idea about who Zelda was. Zelda did say that. Zelda Fitzgerald.
It was Zelda, yes.
She was married to Fitzgerald. And we also did a podcast about her that will be coming out. And she as we talked about in the show, which you'll learn later, she wrote portions of books for F. Scott Fitzgerald, which I found the most fascinating. I mean, she was a writer. She was the real star. And also we talked about how maybe he would not be the man he was because of their relationship. Mm-hmm. I mean, they were a wild couple.
So. I don't think there'd be an F. Scott without a Zelda.
I completely agree. Mm-hmm. All right, guys, let's do the next question. Which woman was a mentor to Ernest Hemingway and Picasso in Paris? So who was a mentor to Hemingway and Picasso in 1920 Paris? You guys have any guesses? You have your list right here. We have Sylvia, Hadley, Gertrude.
Totally, Tina. Totally.
That's
Tina
a great
says
movie.
She could imagine Zelda saying that at a little bar speech in Midnight in Paris.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
She was not a boring woman. She had a lot of fun and drank a lot.
Look at all that.
As everybody was doing. That's why they ran away to Paris, because of Prohibition, right? That was the whole point of being there. All right, we got a lot of Gertrudes. What do you think, Claudine? This is correct, Gertrude.
But she had a huge falling out with both of them later on. Neither one of them. She wrote a book and said a lot of kind of cruddy things about the two of them, Hemingway and Picasso, and neither one of them talked to her again.
Wait, they both stopped talking to her in the end?
Yeah, because she wrote a book that said a bunch of really horrible things. She called Hemingway yellow, like he was a coward. And she said a bunch of stuff about Picasso. And so neither one of them talked to her again.
Well, that's surprising considering she was their mentor. You think she'd support them there. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, well, friendships get broken. A lot of drinking involved as well. All right, I'm going to let Claudine read the next one.
We kind of gave this one away. Which woman started an English bookstore in Paris and lent to famed creatives such as James Joyce?
So who had an English bookstore in Paris and lent to famous people? People needed their books. They needed English books even in Paris. This woman started a bookstore. They should have put her in the Midnight in Paris movie as well.
Yeah, I don't think she is.
She's not. She's not in there.
Yeah. Sylvia.
Oh, we got a lot of good guys in this group. They know their Lost Generation.
I know, you guys are good. Yes, it was, of course, in fact, Sylvia. Her first store that she actually opened, most people will always say that there's just one store before the current one. But there was actually, she opened, the very first one actually opened in Odillon, just around the corner from Rue de l'Odillon, where the second store was. It was number 8 Rue de Departin. And she opened that one on November 19th, 1919. And she stayed there. She was there for a couple years.
Why did she move?
Then she moved it to Rue de l'Odillon. She moved it just right around the corner. When she had come to Paris, she had met Adrienne, and Adrienne had a bookstore, a French bookstore, and she had gone there one day and then met her. And then she thought, well, I'm going to, her father gave her a bunch of money. He was in a train accident, I think it was. And he ended up getting money from insurance. So he gave that money to his daughter to open up a store, and she was going to go back to New York to do it. And she and Adrienne kind of started having a relationship. They were very good friends. They had a relationship, and she said, you should just open the store here in Paris. And so she opened it just right around the corner and then moved it in 1922 to Rue de l'Odillon.
Okay. So the store that everybody goes to today in Paris, Shakespeare and Company, is not the original store.
No, it's not the original store. And actually, I'll try to not get my annoyance level up with this one. But it was actually when George Whitman when he opened that store, it was called La Mistral. And it has nothing to do really with Sylvia or the original Shakespeare and Company. She ended up coming to it one day and said that she liked what he was doing towards the end of her life. And then after she died, he changed the name to Shakespeare and Company. And they have a few of the books that she had in her original lending library upstairs in like a little locked off case. But it has nothing to do with Sylvia Beach or the original store.
Oh, that makes me sad because they like sell it so well. You're like, oh, so many famous people were in here. And
yeah, I mean, it's an amazing store. I mean, it's a fantastic store. It's a great store, and they do a great job with it. But linking it to the close history of what Sylvia Beach did is not exactly the story.
Yeah, it's not the same. Sylvia did a lot more.
Yes, she definitely did.
The old store, what is it now? Do we know what it is today? The old store?
Now, I just posted a picture, or I have a picture I'm doing about it in a couple weeks, and it's I want to say it's a clothing store now. It's like I think it's just a shop. But the one across the street that was Adrienne's is still a bookshop.
Okay, it's still a bookshop.
Yeah. And I did on my Instagram, I just posted it again probably a month or two ago. I did a little walking video on Rue de l'Odéon, and I point them all out.
Oh, great. Yeah. I love Shakespeare and Company, even if it's not the original one. It's a great bookstore.
Yeah, it's a great bookstore.
It's just fun to peek around.
Yeah.
All right. Next question, guys. Who was originally planning to be a doctor? So out of our 5 women, who do you think originally wanted to be a doctor? This one kind of threw me when I first read it. I was like, who would want to be a doctor out of that group? I don't think I'd put Zelda on that list.
Or Pauline. We just narrowed it down.
Yeah, those 2 are automatically out. Who do you think originally wanted to be a doctor? This was a good one for me because I had never heard this before. Shell's guessing Gertrude. Pauline. I mean, she was maybe more than just a Vogue. She wrote for Vogue, right? Pauline was a writer.
I think she modeled for them too. She worked for them when she was definitely when she came to Paris.
All right. We got 2 Gertrudes, 1 Pauline. What does anybody else think? Who wanted to be a doctor? I was surprised when I found out that actually it was Gertrude who wanted to be a doctor originally. But when you think back at her life and you look at how smart she was and how she was like the mentor to Picasso, I mean, obviously she was a strong, smart woman.
Yeah, and she went for like 4 years and she didn't even want to do it like in the first place. And she went to school for 4 years, and in the middle of her 4th year, she just kind of dropped out. We lost Krystal. Can everybody still see?
I just got booted. I'm back.
There she is.
Anyway, she didn't want to go to school.
Yeah, so she dropped out of that. But so that's John Hopkins. She went to John Hopkins. To the next one.
Right. So Claudine, you want to read the next one?
Yeah. Who nearly went bankrupt publishing Ulysses and then didn't receive a penny for the book?
So I think we know who's connected to books. Went bankrupt almost. Published Ulysses.
Yes.
I'm glad you're learning, Ben. I think history is so fascinating, especially Paris history. Oh, good. Yeah, it was our internet. I just got, I don't know why. Okay, so who went bankrupt trying to help publish Ulysses? Yeah, Tina. I think Tina's giving it away right now. It was, yes. It was definitely Sylvia. She had the bookstore. I think Claudine knows a lot about this one.
Yeah, he used to come in there every single day and would just sit there. At the time, a lot of the lost generation, especially the writers, would have their mail actually sent to Shakespeare and Company. And so they'd come by every day and visit each other. James Joyce would come there almost every single day, and he would write, and he would also kind of, bellyache a little about how he can't find a publisher for his book. And so finally one day she said, well, what if I do it? And so she did it, and she started, there was a printer in Dijon that was publishing it for her. And every time that they had like the first proof of it, he had something he wanted different and he wanted changed. And so this went on and on and on and on. So every time they did a proof, it cost her money to get it done again. So it cost her a ton of money. Then it was originally it was published in just kind of in a weekly magazine in the U.S. And then they were seizing the magazines because the story was being banned in the U.S. So here it's an English book. The biggest market they have is, of course, the U.S. And the magazines were getting seized. So she kept trying to figure out how to do this. Well, she ended up telling Hemingway, and Hemingway said, just give me a day. He had a friend that lived in Canada. They would ship the books to him in Canada. The guy would take them and put one book down his pants and then one book like underneath his shirt. And he would take like the ferry or something into New York, and he would slowly take the books into the US, sneaking them in.
That's so wild.
But at the end of it, Joyce ended up finding a different publisher and having it printed. And he basically, just kind of walked away from it and left Sylvia like she almost went bankrupt by it and didn't really get anything from it.
Yeah, he didn't give her any money when he became famous or sold. I mean, that's terrible. He just took advantage of her.
Yeah, it's pretty, it's kind of a sad story. Jerk.
Jerk. All right, guys, moving on to more jerks. We got another quote for you. So you have to tell me who said this quote out of our 5 ladies, okay? So the quote is, "It is the loose ends with which men hang themselves." So once again, it is the loose ends with which men hang themselves. So who do you think said that out of our 5 ladies? Here's our list again. So men are hanging themselves with loose ends. I sense some cheating going on. Something's happening with loose ends. You think it was Gertrude? You think it was Sylvia, Hadley, Zelda, Pauline? Who was having some issues with their husband? I think in the 1920s, everybody was having issues with their husbands in Paris. This is very French, if you don't have a mistress, who are you? Oh, it's a book on Shakespeare Company. Hadley. I think that's a pretty good guess, considering she lost her husband. Zelda's a pretty good guess, too. I mean, she was with Fitzgerald. Fitzgerald and Ernest were besties. Hadley. That would be my first guess, too, is Hadley, considering what happened to her with Pauline. Anybody else got some guesses? Which men are hanging themselves with loose ends? Which woman said that? Between Zelda and Hadley currently. I really thought it was a Hadley quote too, but it's actually Zelda who said that. And I mean, we just recorded a podcast as well about Zelda, and we talk a lot about the cheating that was going on and how she tried to maybe get away from him, and he literally made her a prisoner.
Yes, literally.
No happy ending there. Yeah. Yeah, no, it was actually Zelda Fitzgerald who said that. And I guess she was talking about her husband, F. Scott Fitzgerald, who was obviously sleeping around on her. But wasn't she doing the same thing?
Well, she had that relationship she met a man in the south of France who was a pilot. And then she kind of had it because he was stayed inside writing The Great Gatsby. So she was out on the beach, and she ended up kind of having this relationship with this man. He says later nothing ever happened, but she came home one day and told Fitzgerald that she wanted a divorce, and he locked her in the room until she got over it. So I'm not sure how long that was, how long you would need to be locked in a room to get over that, but. Yeah,
I'm curious how long she was locked up, like how long was it worth locking yourself in a room for Mr. Pilot. But yeah, Zelda was a prisoner to her husband, F. Scott Fitzgerald. He literally locked her in a room until she said she did not want a divorce anymore. She was ready to leave him and run away with the pilot in the south of France.
Yeah, their relationship was definitely based on drama. There was a lot of drama in that relationship.
But don't you think the drama kept their love on fire?
Probably.
It was fiery.
Yeah. I think they say there's a thin line between love and hate.
It's true. I think we can all relate to that.
Yeah. The next one is, who didn't let her terrible driving stop her from contributing to the war effort?
Yes, contributing to the war effort. Okay, so who do you think was a bad driver? Anybody have any ideas of who was a terrible driver, but they still went to war to drive the trucks? So I think that's all the women were really allowed to do in the war. They,
yeah.
You know, help the wounded. Someone outside my window is going crazy on their motorcycle. Let's just that. All right. Air conditioning is not working. I can just melt a little bit more in here. Perfect. So, who was a bad driver during the war? Who do we think, guys?
The ambulance driver. It was Gertrude.
Yes, it was.
And maybe that's why her car was at the shop and she picked up on the lost generation.
She's a terrible driver. She got a lot of accidents.
Yeah. Who worked for Vogue in Paris? We've given you some hints along the way.
So if you guys are listening, we probably just told you the answers to a lot of these.
Please make sure you're taking notes.
You will be tested. We changed our minds. Yeah. So who worked for Vogue in Paris? What a dream job. Who wouldn't want to work for Vogue in Paris? Cheryl says Pauline. I'm guessing it was not Gertrude.
No.
I think that one. Yeah, Pauline.
I think we
gave that one later. It was Pauline.
It was Pauline.
The woman we don't like. The husband stealer.
I would rank them as I would put Hadley first, and then Martha, and then the toss-up would be the last two because they're not my favorite. We need to do one on all the wives of Hemingway. The live stream.
You didn't like Mary a lot. I know you hate Mary. Mary was the last wife of Ernest.
I don't like Mary. I don't like Mary. I like Mary. Yeah. I like Pauline better than Mary.
Yeah.
That does a lot.
Talk about that later.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, who died in a mental hospital when it caught fire and she stayed trapped in her room? Someone already kind of mentioned this earlier.
Did.
Died in a mental hospital. She died by fire, actually. She was put in her room. Back then, they gave a lot of electric shock therapy to help you when you were upset. Very scary stuff. So she was sedated and locked in a room, and she died in a fire.
Mm-hmm.
Who do you think it was, guys, out of our 5 ladies? Was it Zelda, Hadley? Yes, Elizabeth knows.
Yes.
Zelda. I think this one's pretty unanimous.
Yeah. It was sadly Zelda.
Yeah, she was locked away waiting for her electric shock therapy, but she was in and out of mental institutes for the end of her life, or was it her whole?
Yeah, for quite a long time. But there was a fire in the kitchen and it went up through the elevator shaft and she was locked in their room, and the fire escapes were all made of wood and they had already burned too. So she was trapped and
good idea making the fire escapes out of wood.
I know. That's not
much choices back then.
Yeah, not a very good idea.
Poor Zelda.
Yeah.
She had a very exciting life, though. I mean, she got to live 1920s Paris, be married to F. Scott Fitzgerald, which I don't know how exciting that was, but she had a lot of great quotes. I love her writing. All right, guys. Next one. Whose favorite dogs were white standard poodles? Who do you think their favorite dog was a white standard poodle? Any ideas? I don't think Pauline was living the life of having a dog. Hadley had to be in charge of Ernest. She didn't have time for a dog. I feel like Zelda could have been helped a lot by having a dog. You know, dogs are very therapeutic.
I can picture Zelda walking down the streets of Paris with a dog too, a white poodle.
Yeah, a white poodle would have been Zelda's style, I feel like. Any guesses, guys? Who do you think their favorite dog was a white poodle? Which was very fitting for Paris. Poodles are French.
Yes.
I feel like this is kind of a difficult one to have an answer to. White standard poodle. It was actually Gertrude. She loved her white standard poodles, and she had her own.
I don't think I've ever seen a picture of her with a poodle.
No?
Look. I'll have to look.
Find a picture of her with her white-centered poodle.
Yeah.
You know this, I'm a dog whisperer. Oh, you're a dog whisperer. I like it. All right, Claudine, you want to read the next one?
Who was the godmother of Bumby Hemingway? Jack Hemingway.
So, Ernest Hemingway's first son, who do we think was the godmother? Man, I want to be the godmother to a Hemingway.
Okay.
Gertrude. Oh, Biscuit or Basket. We got some dog names for the white poodle of Gertrude's. I hope its name was Basket. I like that. It's kind of cute.
That is cute, name Basket.
Any ideas? Godmother to Ernest Hemingway's firstborn child. No big deal. Gertrude. Obviously, Gertrude was the most responsible out of these women. Pre-med student. Gertrude. Pauline maybe could have been a godmother, but then she ran away with him, so why would she be the godmother? She was the mistress. You guys got it. It was Gertrude. That was.
It was Gertrude, and also her partner, Alice B. Toklas. So when they returned to Paris after he was born in October 1923, they came back to Paris in January and had asked Gertrude and Alice to be his godmothers. So there's a picture you see a lot of Gertrude in the park with Bumby and his little pram. It's very, very cute.
Cute. I want to see those pictures. You should put them on your website.
I will.
Gertrude, the godmother. All right. So who was an acclaimed writer, but rarely under her own name? So who was a well-known writer, but it was never under her own name? Who do you guys think that was? Out of our 5 ladies, who was writing and getting any credit? Surprise, surprise, a woman not getting credit. Who was it, guys? I think we've kind of given some of these away with our chat. Sylvia, Hadley, Zelda, Pauline. Zelda is Gwen's guess. I think that's a pretty good guess, considering she was married to Zelda Fitzgerald. Gertrude, I mean, I would guess Gertrude too. I mean, look at all she did and the people she was hanging out with. Mm-hmm. Anybody else got a guess? Zelda. Mm-hmm. Acclaimed writer, but did not get any credit. Who had a pen name? Tina. Somebody had a pen name. I'm going to let Claudine explain this one.
So it is sadly Zelda. She, F. Scott, from the very first time they just really started dating, he actually would take things from the letters that she would write to him and put it into his books. And would he took her diary one time and gave it to a friend of his that gave it to a publisher. And they were actually going to publish her personal diary as like the diary of a party girl or something like that. But later on, his publisher asked her to write something. And so she did. And they thought it was fantastic. And they said, oh, well, we'll, publish this, but, you'll get more money from it if it's under Scott's name instead of your name. Mm-hmm. So she did that quite a few times. And then at the end of her life, she had kind of like I don't know if it was a manic episode, but she got really, really creative, when she was in one of her institutions there towards the end. And so she was writing a book. And she wrote this whole thing. Basically, the characters were, they were all based on their entire life and their marriage, but she changed the names. And when he found out about it, he was livid because he was writing Tender as the Night and he was going to use all those stories. So he forced her to change them all. And he said that she ruined his life, that she was a plagiarist, all this stuff, which is ironic because that's what he basically did to her.
Yeah, he stole her work, and then he, even in the end, made her change her own work so he could steal more of her work.
Yes,
that's so crazy. And how do we know which works were hers and which were actually his? Like, how do we know the difference?
I don't know. I mean, I think that now, I mean, some of the shorter articles and stuff, I think those have now been attributed to her. But a lot of the stuff they just convinced, that she would write, they'd convince her that, no, this can't be published. And then he would just take it.
Yeah, he would take it and run with it. I love the book Tenders.
Yeah.
So one of my favorite books.
Yeah, it's interesting because you don't, it's not you never think of F. Scott or Zelda. It's always F. Scott and Zelda. Mm-hmm. And I think that their life and their marriage has been portrayed to be this really, fantastic, thing of Hollywood legends type of a thing. But, there was much to it than that.
Yeah. Let's not forget Prisoner in Her Bedroom.
Sadly. Yes.
Now I wonder if I love that book because Zelda kind of wrote it. Tenders tonight.
Yeah.
Read more. All right. You want to read the next one, Claudine?
Well, this one's probably going to be pretty easy. Who set her sights on is stole Hadley's husband? Hadley's husband.
Who stole Hadley's husband, guys? I think we know this one. We've been hating on her a lot during this live chat. The stealer of Ernest Hemingway's. Who stole Ernest Hemingway away from poor Hadley? Cheryl knows. It was Pauline. I think we've mentioned that a couple of times.
It was Pauline. But, I've always said if there wasn't Pauline, I don't think there'd be the Hemingway that we know today. With her family's money, being able to pay for Cuba and Key West and, safaris in Africa. So the larger than life character that he has become, would that have happened if he had stayed with Hadley? I don't know.
That's something I really find interesting about Ernest Hemingway is he rode the money of other women for the first half of his life. That's how he was able to be an artist because he could just he didn't have to pay the bills. He married women who had money, which was very smart.
Yes.
Makes it a little easier to be creative. You don't have to worry about your income. Yes. A little more freeing. All right, guys, we're almost done. Let's ask the last two questions. So, who do you think was a very good pianist? Who do you think played the piano? They were accomplished, really good at the piano. Out of our 5 ladies, I would think Gertrude at first. The best piano player out of our group. She would play. Did she play shows or she just played for fun?
No, she started playing at an early age though, and later she was. They would try to convince to play a show in Paris, and she didn't really like the idea, so she kind of backed away from it.
She didn't like the spotlight.
No.
Yeah, she was humble.
Mm-hmm.
I think we got some good guesses here from Angela and Cheryl. Yes, it was Hadley. Hadley was a very good pianist. She played the piano beautifully, but she was shy and she didn't want the attention.
She was very shy. But yeah, she started playing when she was really, really young. So she had been, she was very, very good.
You want to read our last question, Claudine?
So the last one is, who lined her walls with the modern masters long before anyone knew their names?
I think this is a good one. Humble Hadley. I like that. Yeah. So who had a lot of beautiful artwork on their walls before the artists were famous? Who had access to all these famous artists out of our 5 women? And her walls were covered in their artwork. And she helped them become who they were, basically. I'm trying to imagine her talking to Picasso. From everything I know about Picasso, he was not very good at taking orders from women.
Midnight in Paris did such a great job with the characters and keeping them, very true to kind of how they were and stuff. I've watched that movie a million times.
Yeah, it did a good job with the characters for sure.
Gertrude. Yes, it was Gertrude. She actually moved to Paris in 1903 with her brother Leo. And it was actually Leo that kind of really got into art at first. He was the one who was like, oh, we should start collecting art. They befriended Ambrose Vollard, who was he had a big gallery, and he was actually very close with Cezanne, and he had a bunch of other, just like a huge wealth of paintings in his gallery. And so he kind of educated them on what to look for and what to get. And so they just started amassing all of these different paintings. And so they had like Matisse and, Picasso and Cezanne and all of these. He had some Toulouse-Lautrec. And a art critic one day said that she saw the genius in these people before they were ever the masters. So, I mean, it's pretty astounding that that she had Picassos and all of the stuff, and they probably cost nothing at that time.
Yeah.
And her apartments were literally like floor to ceiling of paintings. And they had the apartment on Rue de Fleur, which she had with her brother for quite a few years, for about 10 years. And it was just covered with paintings. And when she lived in Baltimore for a while, is it the Cohn sisters?
Yeah, the Cohn sisters.
She ended up meeting these two sisters that ended up having like salons every single Saturday night and having people over their house. So when she got to Paris, she decided that would be kind of a good idea because she had like such an extensive art collection. Matisse and all these other people would just drop by all the time and just come in, and they kind of wanted to come just see the art. And so she created this salon to be like Saturday evenings at this time. This is when you could come over, because she couldn't get her writing done or anything else because people were just popping in all the time. So she kind of, she really kind of made the salon something that, people would attend. And the men would come in with their wives or girlfriends, and the wives and girlfriends would go off with Alice. And the men would hang out with Gertrude and, talk art and all those kinds of things.
That was some great.
But she had told when she first met Hemingway, she told him, don't buy clothes, don't spend money on other stuff, buy art. And she says it's a better investment. And at the time, he thought, well, what? And she goes, look at your contemporaries. So there was a painting by Miro called The Farm that he really, really wanted. And so he worked out a deal, and he kept paying him a little bit at a time. And so he finally got the painting. He kept it pretty much his whole life. It was it was Hadley's. He got it as a gift for Hadley. When he moved to Cuba, he wrote her a letter saying, can I hang on to it for 6 months, and then I'll send it to you. Well, he ended up keeping it through the end of his life. And at the end of after he killed himself, she, had inquired about the painting, and they had found the note that said, this is, I'll send it back to you. This is, for you and Jack. And Mary burned that letter so that she didn't see it. But they ended up getting, the painting ended up going to, I think it's in the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York.
You can see it in America, guys, for all our American people. Wow, that's so fascinating. And what a great idea to network. I mean, if I had enough money to just put a bunch of nice art on my walls, you can invite like the best artists to hang out with.
But I mean, it is, in Midnight in Paris, there's that scene when they're all in her apartment, and that's basically kind of how it was. You'd have writers and artists and, all of these people that back then they were just normal people. They're like all, they're all just like us. But now we look at the names and you're like, oh my God, like Matisse is there.
Yeah, they were just all hanging out together. No big deal.
Yeah, just kind of crazy.
I want to go to Gertrude's party. Yeah, Tina, you can see why we hate Mary. Mary was not nice. Like the last wife. She was the worst, actually. All right, guys. What were you saying?
What she did to Movable Feast is a whole nother story.
Yeah. We talk about that in the podcast. So tune in for Paris History Avec A Hemingway, so that you can hear about her, because we talked a lot about Mary and what she did. Yeah. I think we talked about her during Hadley's, correct?
Yes. Yeah, and I think that one's coming up in a couple weeks.
It is. And we are so happy you guys came and did some questions with us. You guys are smart. Your lost generation history. I don't think we fooled any of you that well. But hopefully you learned a little something. And keep in mind, every Monday we have the podcast, Paris History Avec A Hemingway. Me and Claudine talk about a different famous creative woman in France every week. And then every Wednesday is the regular show with Vie Creative, where I interview a living creative person with French connections. So we're not only talking about the dead people, the living people as well, who are still making art, having maybe salons in their living room, and they're just not famous yet. So maybe someone from the podcast is going to be like super famous in 10 years. You know?
Yeah.
50 years.
Well, and then tomorrow the podcast is about Dalida.
Yes. For those of you who know who Dalida, I always like to call her French Cher. Dalida.
Yeah.
She's French Cher.
She's pretty amazing. She's an international star, but not really known in the United States.
Yeah. Yeah. And she never wanted to tour here, right? She never toured in America.
No.
Yeah.
No, she was asked twice and she said no, no thanks.
Yeah. Pass. Hard pass.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, she had a very interesting life, very sad in the romance department, if you don't already know.
Yeah.
But the music. And also we've started a book club. We're starting a new book this month for July. Actually, well, July is just a couple days away. So if you're interested in joining the book club or read the book for the month, it's always on a woman with French inspirations that maybe didn't get credit, French history, women. And you can just send me or Claudine a message and we'll invite you to the book club and you can read along. And at the end of the month, we'll have a meeting to talk about the book.
Yeah, the one for July is going to be Paris Without End. And it is if you like The Paris Wife, then you're going to love this book. It's really about the actual life of Hadley. And the author used a bunch of different tape recorded interviews with Hadley. And so it's really like she really did her research. So if you really want to know more about Hadley, more than just The Paris Wife, it's a really fantastic book. So I'm excited for everybody to read that one.
And thank you guys so much again for joining us. We'll do this again in another 2 weeks. Information to come on that, but we love having you guys interact with us and answering questions and learning with us. It's been really fun. So tune in to La Vie Creative podcast and send us a message if you'd like to join the book club. All right, guys, until 2 weeks from now, have a great day.
2 weeks. Yeah, thanks so much for joining us, everybody.
See you. Bye.
A bientôt.